Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into Elon Musk's bold plan to slash federal spending through the Donald Trump-backed U.S. Department of Government Efficiency, aka DOGE. But is this really a serious effort to fix government waste, or is it just political theater? The numbers tell a shocking story. Stick around because this one's going to get interesting. So here's the deal. Elon Musk vowed to shrink the federal government by eliminating entire agencies and slashing the workforce. Sounds dramatic, right? But there's a problem. Critics say his savings won't even come close to covering the massive tax cuts Republicans are pushing, and even if DOGE succeeds in cutting spending, the numbers just don't add up to any real budget fix. In the short term, all of this borrowing and tax cutting is pushing inflation and interest rates even higher. We saw this play out in 2021 with the American Rescue Plan, which added roughly 3 percentage points to inflation. And now, the new tax cuts being proposed could make things even worse if they aren't balanced with serious spending reductions. And in the long term, things get even more dangerous. The US is carrying more debt than ever before in the developed world. At some point, Washington may not even be able to borrow enough money to cover its spending, and when that happens, the government could be forced to print more money, triggering even more economic chaos. Musk and DOGE claim they've saved $55 billion so far, but financial analysts say the real number is closer to $2 billion, at best. And even that might not stick. Why? Because DOGE doesn't actually have the legal power to make spending cuts permanent. Any money they cut has to be reallocated elsewhere, unless Congress officially reduces spending levels. So in reality, DOGE's savings amount to just 1/35 of 1% of the federal budget. In other words, it's basically nothing. Meanwhile, House Republicans just passed a budget resolution with $4.5 trillion in tax cuts over the next 10 years. How do they plan to pay for this? By cutting funding for key programs like Medicaid, SNAP, food stamps, and student loan programs. But here's where the math completely falls apart. Let's break it down. Musk's DOGE cuts save $2 billion, while GOP tax cuts create $4.5 trillion in new debt. That's a massive gap. Even conservative analysts are pointing out how unrealistic these numbers are. You can't slash revenue while making tiny spending cuts and expect the budget to balance itself. One of Musk's biggest ideas is to cut government spending by laying off federal employees. Right now there are 2.3 million civilian federal workers. If 1/4 of them were laid off, which would mean cutting 600,000 jobs, the US would save just 1% of total federal spending. Not nothing, but also nowhere near enough to solve the deficit problem. Yes, cutting waste is a good idea. Yes, some agencies might need to go. But firing government workers won't fix the budget crisis. Why? Because most government spending doesn't go to salaries. It goes to programs and benefits for citizens. So even if Musk follows through on his biggest layoffs yet, it's not the game changer he's making it out to be. At the end of the day, the real issue is where the cuts are happening. Instead of tackling major sources of government spending, DOGE is focusing on things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, contracts, federal employee benefits, and foreign aid. Sure, these are hot-button issues for some conservatives, but in terms of actual spending, they barely move the needle. That's why critics are calling DOGE's efforts government spending cut theater. Translation? It's a distraction. The real action is happening elsewhere, with Congress making massive tax cuts while failing to enforce meaningful spending reductions. So what do you think? Is Musk actually reforming the federal budget? Or is this all just political showmanship? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more in-depth analysis on politics, tech, and business. We'll see you in the next one.